This bloody massacre carried out during a Christmas party in a crowded business complex. Hundreds of employees, innocent people, inside that building when this carnage began.
Our daughter's in there. She texted us about 30 minutes ago and said that there was a shooter. She thought he'd shot 10 to 20 people.
She said the guy came in next to her office and I guess started shooting. They locked themselves in her office. They seen bodies on the floor, and she said right now ambulance are taking people out.
The alarms went off and they were all told to hunker down and hide and shelter in place. And he says that eventually the police came by and took them out. We never heard any gunshots or anything.
And all of a sudden, pop, 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 and she was playing, and all of a sudden, boom.
On the Record is live on the ground investigating this horrific and evil rampage. Griff Jenkins has been pounding the pavement, speaking to people who knew the suspected killers. Griff.
Hi, Greta. Much of the activity today surrounding the condominium owned by Saeed Farouk, his wife, where his daughter and mother-in-law lived as well. And no one was more shocked to find out that there were a dozen pipe bombs and an arsenal of ammo and weapons in that condominium than their immediate next-door neighbors, Alan and Annie Frost. Take a look.
How close to you were they?
We share walls.
You share walls?
Yeah, share walls and fences.
When you heard the news, when you saw in the news who this was, or I guess maybe you found out first when the SWAT teams and the police came in. Walk me through that, will you?
Well, for me, the first indication that I had of how close it was my wife called me when I was at work. And so saying that she was going over to a friend's house because they were going to be investigating our neighbor. So for me, that was my first indication that our neighbor was a suspect.
So I was home watching the news, and I received a text from a neighbor down the way in the complex. Her husband found out from a police officer that was at the end of the driveway, the entrance into the complex, and he said that the police were going to raid the house that they are living in, and she said, I need to get out of the house right now.
They found makeshift bombs.
That's what I understand. I didn't speak to the agents about that, but that's what I heard on the
That has
news
to terrify
report.
you.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't be, right?
It is right next door, for us, literally on the other side of the wall. And so it is disturbing to think about that.
And we're learning a little more about who Saeed Farouk was. Remember, he was a health inspector here in San Bernardino County, and we talked to a restaurant owner, Kasha Shahabi, who was once inspected by him. Take a look.
This morning, I was going through my emails and I finally found it, and it was him sending me an email, and I saw his name, and it freaked me out. You know, I just started cussing. What stands out about him was he seemed disconnected, didn't really care too much about what he does, and what I mean by that is didn't have a lot of rapport.
And we're joined by Ted Williams, our own Ted Williams, a former federal agent, a homicide detective. Ted, you've been talking to cops on the ground. What are your first impressions?
Well, the first impressions are law enforcement officers are shocked by this division as to whether this was a terrorist act or whether this was workplace related. They believe it was a terrorist act, Griff.
Greta?
Ted, as you're out there and you're talking to the police officers, I mean, you have to admit that this was an amazing response. And that no one else was killed is absolutely extraordinary. I got to tip my hat to these police officers.
Yeah, Greta, you're absolutely right. The men and women of law enforcement out here have done an exemplary job. They went in. You got to understand, when this thing first broke, there was a great deal of confusion. They were out there on the highway. They were in the middle of a shootout. They went. They served and protected this community very well. They even went into that apartment. There was booby traps in the car. They were dealing with a lot of question marks out here, and they did an exemplary job, Greta.
And this is not to lay the blame on anybody, but if you see something, say something. I mean, certainly if someone's buying all the ingredients to make this bomb factory at home, you know, someone must have been suspicious, and everyone's always afraid to speak up.
You know, Greta, if I could actually just jump in, though, that couple they were separated from that condominium only by a wall, and I pressed them on and off camera on whether or not they knew something was going on to have so much material, and they said, honestly, no.
They may not be the ones, though, Griff, but somebody sold them the stuff. You know, it's like, I mean, I don't know how much is in there, but it sounds like it's a virtual bomb factory, and they did go to a store unless they went every day at a different store for the last, 8 months. I don't know, but, they must have been suspicious.
You're absolutely right. I think when you look at the proportion of the amount of ammunition, the amount of bomb-making material, the federal authorities are going to have to backtrack. They're going to look at some of this bomb-making material. Hopefully, they're going to find fingerprints. They're going to find forensics on this material that's not either Farouk or Malik.
Thank you both, Griff, Ted. Thank you.